NFL scouts have long prioritized arm strength, footwork, and mechanics. But after Shedeur Sanders' recent performance, not on the field but behind the mic, front offices are rethinking everything. As chaos swirled around the Browns' locker room, Sanders' press conference became a masterclass in self-awareness and maturity. He didn't blame poor play calling. He didn't shield himself behind inexperience. He told the truth about offensive breakdowns, about players being out of position, about what went wrong and why. It wasn't polished. It was honest, and it echoed louder than any touchdown.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
What Sanders revealed wasn't a skill set. It was a mindset. And for teams constantly hunting for the next great quarterback, that mindset may be the missing piece. His leadership didn't come with fanfare or bravado. It came through the quiet strength of accountability. NFL decision-makers may need to reframe what they value most in a young quarterback, because Sanders is making a clear case. Character isn't just a bonus. It's the foundation. Nobody saw this coming. Not like this. One press conference, one post-game mic drop. And just like that, Shedeur Sanders went from promising rookie to the quarterback the entire NFL is suddenly watching. And not because he threw 5 touchdowns. Not because he pulled off a fourth-quarter comeback. But because when everything went wrong, when the Cleveland Browns lost a game they could have and probably should have won, Sanders stepped in front of the press, took the blame, and showed more leadership in 5 minutes than some players show in 5 years. It was raw. It was honest. And it was the kind of moment that shifts how teams, fans, and analysts view a player. Sanders, at just 22, didn't point fingers. He didn't call out coaches, teammates, or play calling. He called out himself. Not in a performative, look-at-me way, but in a matter-of-fact, this starts with me kind of way that hit different, because it wasn't just about him. It was about the state of the Browns, the breakdowns on the field, the miscommunication, and the growing frustration on the sideline. Let's be clear, this wasn't just about losing a game. This was about losing control. The offense was disjointed. Players were in the wrong spots. Special teams imploded. Coaching decisions were questionable, and tensions boiled over between Sanders and wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. Caught on camera for the world to see, it had all the makings of a headline disaster. But then Sanders stepped up and reframed the entire story. He didn't shy away from the sideline drama. He addressed it directly, shut down the speculation, and reminded everyone what mattered. That kind of composure, especially under that level of scrutiny, doesn't just show maturity. It shows presence. It shows an understanding of leadership that goes way beyond what most rookies are expected or even capable of delivering. And that's why this went viral. That's why NFL teams started paying attention in a whole new way. Because it's not just about how you lead when you're winning. It's about how you respond when the team's unraveling, the media is circling, and fans are already questioning whether you're built for the job. Sanders showed up, handled it with poise, and left people wondering if the Browns finally have their guy. Not just a talented quarterback, but a leader. In a sport that glorifies a highlight reel, it's easy to overlook what really matters in a franchise quarterback. Arm strength is great. Speed helps. But what happens when a game slows down, the pressure ramps up, and everything starts to fall apart around you? Most rookies crack. They stumble, they get defensive, they dodge responsibility. Shedeur did the opposite. He stood there, looked straight into the cameras, and admitted the obvious. Things weren't working. Players weren't in the right spots. Execution didn't match preparation. The system, not the individuals, was breaking down, and that acknowledgement, coming from a rookie, landed hard. Not just because it was true, but because he said it out loud, with no fear. NFL teams spend millions trying to find that kind of mental makeup. The guy who stays level-headed. The one who can read a defense and a locker room. The one who can handle a sideline confrontation with maturity and a press conference with tact. And that's exactly what Sanders just put on display. What makes it even more compelling is how it aligns with everything veterans like Myles Garrett have been preaching. Garrett, a cornerstone of the Browns and a future Hall of Famer, didn't just praise Sanders. he validated him. Garrett knows what leadership looks like. He's seen guys who talk a good game and disappear when things get tough. Sanders isn't one of them. And Garrett's message was clear. This is the kind of leadership Cleveland needs more of: ownership, accountability, no shortcuts. Because for all of Cleveland's struggles over the years, the missing piece has never just been talent. It's been culture. It's been identity. Quarterbacks come and go. Coaches rotate like turnstiles. And in the middle of all that noise, Shedeur Sanders just delivered a moment of clarity. A moment that made people believe this team might finally be able to reset. But that's not going to happen overnight. And it's not going to happen unless the organization meets Sanders where he is. He's already holding himself to a higher standard. The question is whether the Browns will do the same. Whether the coaching staff will fix the miscommunication he called out. Whether the front office will build around a player who's already showing the mental edge of a franchise cornerstone. Because here's the truth. Quarterbacks like this don't come around often. Players who can read coverage are valuable. Players who can read a room, even more so. Sanders did both. And let's not downplay what he was up against. That game was messy. It exposed everything wrong with the Brown system: bad execution, lack of chemistry, and coaching decisions that didn't seem to match what was happening on the field. Most players would have used that as cover, blamed the situation, blamed their youth, blamed anything but themselves. But Sanders, he walked into the fire and took it all on his chest. That's not something you teach. That's something you have. NFL scouts, coaches, and executives saw it for what it was: a glimpse of what leadership at the next level looks like. And maybe more importantly, a reason to rethink how they evaluate quarterbacks in the first place. Because if a 22-year-old rookie can navigate adversity like that, what does that say about some of the veterans who still crumble under less? This wasn't just about Shedeur proving he can survive in the NFL. It was about showing he can lead in it. And now, everything changes. The expectations, the pressure, the spotlight. But the biggest shift? The respect. From fans, from teammates, from the league. Because in a moment where everything around him was unraveling, Shedeur Sanders didn't just hold his ground. He set the tone. So now the Browns have a choice to make. They've seen what their rookie quarterback is capable of, not just physically, but mentally. Do they build around that leadership? Do they create a system that matches the standards? Or do they waste it like they've wasted so much before? That press conference didn't solve all of Cleveland's problems, but it did something just as important. It showed that for once, they might have the right player in the right position to lead through them. Let us know how you see it. Is Shedeur Sanders the future of the Browns? Can his leadership be the turning point this franchise has been waiting for? Or will Cleveland's deeper issues drag him into the same cycle that's buried so many before him? Tap that like button if you're rooting for real leadership in a league that desperately needs more of it. Share this with Browns fan who's seen it all. And drop a comment, because if Shedeur's just getting started, you won't want to miss what comes next. And you know what to do. Subscribe. Because this is just the beginning. Let's not pretend this wasn't a moment, because it was. It wasn't just a soundbite or a highlight from another press conference. It was a rare flash of real leadership, unfiltered, uncoached, and completely unexpected from a rookie who's supposed to be finding his footing in the NFL. Instead, Shedeur Sanders is setting the tone. That viral press conference didn't just get attention because of what he said. It got attention because of what it meant. In a league where quarterbacks are expected to smile through failure, sidestep accountability, and blame execution without ever getting specific, Sanders came out and told the truth, the actual truth. Players weren't where they needed to be. The game plan didn't translate to the field. The problems weren't about effort. They were about systems, communication, readiness. And that's the kind of thing that usually gets whispered about in anonymous sources, not said aloud by the quarterback after the game. But he said it. And he didn't say it to deflect blame. He said it to take it. Because even while pointing out the breakdowns around him, Shedeur still framed it all through his responsibility, through what he needs to do better. That's what made the difference. That's why the press conference hit like it did. Because it wasn't finger-pointing. It was ownership. You can't fake that. You can't rehearse it. You either have that level of emotional maturity or you don't. And here's the part that really matters. NFL teams value this more than ever. Because as the league evolves, as quarterbacks are asked to do more on and off the field, front offices are looking beyond the physical tools. They're looking for guys who get it. Guys who can command a huddle, handle the media, weather a losing streak, and still have the respect of the locker room. Sanders just checked every one of those boxes in one night. That doesn't mean he's perfect. That doesn't mean he's a lock for greatness. But it means he's got the foundation. And that's everything in this league. Because you can develop arm strength. You can fix footwork. But you can't coach someone into being unshakable under pressure. That's what Shedeur was. When the cameras were rolling, when the questions got uncomfortable, when the sideline drama was still fresh in everyone's minds, he was composed, clear, calm, and still holding himself accountable. That's rare. And that's why veterans like Myles Garrett rally behind him so quickly. Garrett's seen a lot in Cleveland. He's watched this team cycle through quarterbacks, coaches, and seasons of promise turn to disappointment. So when he throws the support behind a rookie, it's not a PR move. It's because he sees something real, something different. And Garrett didn't just support Sanders. He reinforced his message. He echoed the same ideas about accountability, leadership, and culture. That's not just an endorsement. That's a shift. A statement that the locker room isn't just hoping Shedeur becomes a leader. They already see him as one. That kind of respect doesn't come from hype. It comes from credibility. And you don't get credibility by throwing touchdowns when the game is already out of reach. You get by standing tall when it's all falling apart and refusing to point anywhere but inward. It also raises the stakes for everyone else. Because now, the Browns can't hide behind the usual excuses. They can't pretend this is just part of the process. Sanders has already raised the standard. He's already shown what accountability should look like. And if the rest of the organization doesn't rise to meet that, that says more about them than it ever could about him. That's what makes this press conference such a turning point. Not because of what happened on the field, but because of what happened after, when the lights were on, when the narrative was being written. And Sanders chose not to protect himself, not to manage optics, but to tell the truth. And that truth, it exposed something deeper. This isn't a talent problem. It's a system problem. It's about preparation, culture, execution, communication. The things that separate contenders from teams that are always one piece away from figuring it out. Sanders laid that all bare without throwing anyone under the bus. That's leadership. And it's the kind of leadership that can reshape an entire organization, if they let it. Because the sad reality is, we've seen young talent get wasted in bad environments before. Quarterbacks with poise and vision, who never got the support they needed, who drowned in chaos they didn't create. And watching Shedeur take that podium, you couldn't help but ask the hard question, will Cleveland be different? Because everything about Sanders suggests he's ready for that next step. He's not asking for it. He's acting like it's already his. He's setting the tone in a way that challenges everyone else, coaches, teammates, executives, to rise to it. And it's not just Cleveland paying attention. Across the league, teams saw this moment for what it was, a leadership clinic. A reminder that the most valuable asset a young quarterback can have isn't a cannon arm or breakaway speed. It's the ability to take control of a room, to stay calm under pressure, to make sense of the chaos, and keep people focused on solutions instead of blame. Sanders did that. And now, there's a spotlight on Cleveland again, but this time it's different. This time, the focus isn't on dysfunction or failure. It's on whether the franchise can finally support a player who's already showing them how to build something sustainable. That starts with acknowledging the problems Sanders pointed out. Players not knowing their assignments, communication breaking down in key moments, execution falling apart under pressure. These aren't small issues. These are the cracks in the foundation. And if they're not addressed, no amount of raw talent will be enough. But if they are, if the Browns take this seriously, if they fix what needs fixing and build around the leadership Sanders is already showing, then this moment won't just be remembered as a viral press conference. It'll be remembered as the beginning of something Cleveland hasn't had in decades. Stability, identity, direction. Because Shedeur Sanders didn't ask for that spotlight. But now that it's on him, he's not blinking. He's not shrinking. He's standing in it, telling the truth and leading with clarity. And that's what franchise quarterbacks do. So now it's up to the organization, up to the coaching staff, up to the front office. They've got a player who's already shown he's built for more than just the game. He's built for the moment. Are they going to meet him there? Or are they going to let this turn into another wasted? It's the beginning of something that feels different. And if you've been following the Browns for any amount of time, you know how hard that is to say with a straight face. This team has made hope feel like a scam. Season after season, draft pick after draft pick, quarterback after quarterback. It's been a rinse and repeat cycle of hype, collapse, and heartbreak. So many next greats have walked through those locker room doors only to be swallowed whole by the dysfunction that seems permanently baked into the franchise DNA. But then came this press conference. One that didn't come after a win. One that wasn't about a miracle comeback or a last-minute touchdown. One that came after a frustrating, disjointed, painfully Cleveland-style loss. The kind of loss that usually makes fans tune out and players deflect. But Shedeur Sanders didn't deflect. He leaned in, and that's what turned a post-game Q&A into a full-blown NFL storyline. He didn't dodge the obvious. The offense wasn't clicking. Players were in the wrong spots. There were clear gaps between what was practiced and what was executed. He could have thrown out the usual lines. We got to clean things up. We're building. We'll look at the tape. But he didn't go there. He called it like it was. Not to embarrass anyone. Not to stir drama. But because that's what leaders do when things go wrong. They acknowledge the problem. They take ownership. And they make it clear they're not going to let it slide. That's what hit everyone watching. Because we're not used to seeing that level of poise and self-awareness from a 22-year-old rookie in the NFL. And especially not from someone playing in Cleveland, a place where quarterbacks usually learn to keep their heads down and survive. But Shedeur isn't playing survival ball. He's playing to build something. It's in how he spoke. Not guarded, not reactive, measured, sincere. When asked about the tension with Jerry Jeudy, he didn't brush it off or pretend nothing happened. He addressed it directly and professionally. He shifted the focus back to the team, to accountability, to fixing what actually matters instead of giving oxygen to side stories. That alone shut down what could have easily been a locker room distraction that spiraled into another Browns in Chaos headline. And it turned into a showcase, not of stats, but of leadership. And leadership in the NFL? It's currency, because it's easy to find athletes who can throw a perfect spiral. It's much harder to find the ones who can walk into a fractured locker room, take responsibility, and still command respect without alienating the room. That's what separates franchise quarterbacks from placeholders. That's what separates the guys who can lead from the ones who do. That's what Sanders did. And here's the thing. It forced everyone else in the building to look in the mirror. Because when your rookie quarterback is the one standing up and addressing the communication breakdowns and the lack of execution with more clarity than your head coach, it makes you wonder, who's actually in control? It's a tough question, but it's one Cleveland has to face. Because Shedeur's words weren't an attack. They were a challenge. A call for Browns to stop playing around the edges and start addressing the core issues that have plagued this team for years. The misalignment between talent and performance. The inconsistency in preparation, the culture that allows mistakes to snowball into collapse. And by calling it out, Sanders didn't alienate himself. He elevated the conversation. He made it clear that he wasn't there to accept mediocrity just because he's a rookie. He wasn't there to learn how to survive in a broken system. He was there to change it. Or at the very least, hold it accountable. You think veteran players don't notice that? You think coaches across the league aren't seeing this and thinking, this guy's different? Because they are. And it's not just about football anymore. This is about culture, mentality, the kind of player you build around, not just on paper, but in real time. Because every franchise has turned things around. Cincinnati with Burrow, Buffalo with Allen, Baltimore with Lamar. It started the moment their guy demanded more from himself and from everyone around him. That's what this press conference felt like, the beginning of that moment. Of course, this doesn't mean Cleveland is fixed. Far from it. There are still issues all over the field. Special teams, misassignments, questionable play calling. It's a long list. But what Sanders showed is that he's not the issue. In fact, he might be the clearest part of the solution. And that's why this resonated across the league. Because you rarely see a young player take this kind of loss on the chin and still walk into the press room with that kind of calm, clear-eyed authority. Most rookies, in that situation, are rattled, guarded, trying to make it through without saying the wrong thing. Shedeur Sanders walked in, said the right things, and said them right. He wasn't just answering questions. He was rewriting the conversation around what leadership looks like in this league. He was showing every scout, coach, and executive that mental makeup might be just as important, if not more, than mechanics and measurables. And in doing so, he gave the Browns something they haven't had in a long time. Hope with substance. Not flashy headlines. Not off-season hype videos. Not maybe this is our year energy. But real, visible proof that someone on the field is ready to hold it all together, even when it's falling apart. So now it's on the organization. Because this can go one of two ways. Either they recognize what they got in Shedeur Sanders, a poised, intelligent, emotionally mature quarterback with all the tools to lead a franchise, and they start building around him. Or they do what Cleveland has done too many times before. They waste it. They ignore the signs. They leave him to fend for himself. They drown his leadership in dysfunction until he either regresses or moves on. And if that happens, nobody's going to blame Shedeur, because he already showed what he's about. He already made it clear he's not here to play the waiting game. He's here to lead, to fix, to win. So the real pressure now, it's not on him. It's on Cleveland. Will they protect his growth? Will they align the coaching with the leadership? Will they give him a system worth executing? Or will this just be another name added to the tragic legacy of what could have been? Time will tell. But for now, Shedeur Sanders has done everything right. And in the NFL, moments like that don't come around often. When they do, you hold on to them. Let us know where you stand. Is Shedeur Sanders a real deal? Can his leadership survive in Cleveland? Or is this press conference going to be remembered as the beginning of another letdown? Drop a comment. Hit that like button if you're rooting for real change in Cleveland. And subscribe if you're following the rise of a rookie who just might be the key to turning this franchise around. For good. Because the Browns might be unpredictable. But what Shedeur Sanders showed, that was undeniable.